Hi guys, this is Hirosaki. This story is all about what if Naruto was adopted by Inoichi. Inoichi's decision to adopt the boy was a spur-of-the-moment thing, but he stood by it, and he could not be prouder of both his children, even if they lived to give him gray hair. Or, how a Yamanaka-trained Naruto went and cheerfully dismantled the last shreds of Sasuke's self-image, because conventional therapy obviously wasn't working well enough, and then proved that even the best minds could be entirely dumb when it came to romance. Before we start, kindly like and subscribe to this channel, and look over the description box for the author of this amazing storyline. Welcome aboard. Chapter 5, The Power of Blonde. Chapter text. It's not here this year either. Maybe it died. Maybe it finally croaked. Ain't seen it round in a while. Ugh, that thing, creeping around in the gutters. Demon child. Demon. Naruto watched as the parents who had already dropped off their children for the first day of the school year congregated in front of the academy, and reflected. His parents had never lied to him about where he had come from, and he still had a few indistinct memories of the time before he was adopted, but this really put it into perspective. Naruto loved his parents very much, and was very grateful for them. He even loved his sister, although that was sometimes difficult. "Oh, the Yamanaka children," said someone in the same huddle of mothers by the gate. "So beautiful. Unbelievable, really. They could be actors. They could be models." Naruto loved his family very much. For a lot of reasons. "Hear that, Mum?" Ino drawled, pulling out a round cosmetic mirror and checking her face, were the prettiest. She tried not to open her mouth too wide, cause she didn't want anyone to see that she was missing 2 teeth. When Naruto's baby teeth fell out, the new ones always grew in overnight. Ino's took ages. Mum shook her head in mock dismay. "Well, they're right, Ino-chan, but if you come back home with a swelled head, I will make sure to puncture it during our weapons practice." Ino shuddered. Naruto didn't know why. Mum was awesome with kunai and shuriken and even senbon, and she taught taijutsu a lot better than Dad did, so Naruto always enjoyed it when she was home and spent time teaching them. Dad took over whenever she was traveling, but he was just a lot better at teaching the other stuff. "Yeah, sister," he said, taking advantage of the golden opportunity, "if we let you stay full of hot air, you'll float off one day, and what a tragedy that will irk dash." Ino retracted her hand from Naruto's stomach and calmly stashed away her mirror. Mum sighed at them. "Try to remember that how you act reflects on the clan, will you?" Ino and Naruto exchanged a look and nodded. They both turned wide, innocent eyes at their mum. Mum didn't seem impressed at all. "And what we've talked about yesterday dash. You repeated it 1,000,000 times, Mum," Ino pointed out. "We're unlikely to forget." "And you know I don't stand for bullying," Naruto added. "If anyone said or did anything nasty to that last Uchiha boy, they were going to inflict the full power of blonde on them." Ino and Naruto were rivals, sure, but on this one thing they were in complete agreement. The third year of the academy only had 1 class. There should have been 2 still, with Shikamaru safely on the other side of the wall from the 2 pains in his neck, but the Uchiha massacre happened. Their year only lost 2 Uchiha students, but it was enough for a number of the civilian parents to panic, realize what they had signed their children up for, and pull those children out of the program. Hence only 1 class. Luckily, they scored Irika-sensei as their homeroom teacher. Also luckily, Shikamaru and Chuji sat in the back with the other social outcasts, Minakawa Fuyumi, an orphan who had apparently been subjected to something that had caused her to close off, Aburame Shino, who barely spoke, and did not socialize at all, and Inuzuka Kiba, who was tolerable enough in very small doses and sort of friends with Chuji since they started the academy in the same class. The outcasts by the laws of nature didn't have much direct contact with the Yamanaka siblings, who sat in the center of the popular crowd as though they were holding court. "I'll ask him to have lunch with us," Chuji announced. "I've packed an extra bento dash." "You mean Bleach Boy?" Kiba cut in. "Yeah, dream on." His ball of fluff that would one day resolve into a dog yipped in agreement. Let him have his graft, Shikamaru mumbled into his arms, ready to fall asleep on his desk the instant Irika-sensei would shut up the students and start droning on about the shinobi rules or the history of Konoha or whatever. He's working hard for it. Whatcha mean, graft? Asked Kiba. Shikamaru didn't feel like opening an eye to convey his estimation of Kiba's intelligence. Graft. He's charming the crowd. Let him. When he wants to be a real person again, he knows where to find us. Chuji angrily shoved the second bento into his bag. That's not fair. He's like this because you stopped being his friend, not the other way around. And that hurt. A little. Because it was true, and because Chuji was still suffering the repercussions. But Shikamaru had made his decision, and it was a good decision. Chuji would get it one day. Until then, Shikamaru was just glad that Chuji loved him too much to stop being his friend over it. When Inoichi came home from work after a hard day of running drills with ANBU trainees, his wife was lying in wait for him. She might not have been literally lying, but she had definitely been waiting, and the expression on her face read as we need to talk. Inoichi was an elite jounin of Konoha. He did not scare easily. Yuki rolled her eyes at his wary expression. I was tidying up the bedroom and found your lesson plans for Ino and Yoshi. Inoichi wasn't sure what was the problem. He had consulted Yuki regarding those plans, and they had agreed on the rough schedule. I based them on my father's plans for me, only spread them over twice the amount of time, since we're not actually at war right now. Right now? Yuki repeated suspiciously. Just realistic future outlook, no concrete news, he assured her. She sighed in relief. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to frighten you. He sat down next to her and suddenly felt the weight of the past 10 hours crash on him. This was nonsense. He wasn't nearly as old as to feel this tired after supervising ANBU recruits. There had only been 2 emergencies, and only one of them ran the risk of a fatality. It was a slow day by ANBU standards. Honey, Yuki said, I know you want to focus on teaching Yoshi clan techniques, and I absolutely agree. But that does not mean he should be denied his own heritage. Oh. Inoichi had forgotten about that. Yoshi was his son, and it had been a very long time since Inoichi had looked at the boy and remembered Namake's Minato. Am I doing that? No, you are not. Yuki patted his knee. Not more than you must by the order of Hokage-sama anyway. But there are still things you could give him. Well, I don't know anyone who has a clue about chakra chains, but we can start him on Fuinjutsu. I'll ask Hideyoshi. With his parents being one Uzumaki and one homegrown Fuinjutsu genius, he is bound to take to it, Yuki approved, flashed a brief smile, and promptly turned grave again. Also, we'll have to tell him about you-know-what. It was too early. Far too early. Yoshi was only not quite 9 yet. But he was starting the serious clan training, and it was better to tell him now so he could build a solid sense of self and not have to start again from the ground up once the truth bomb was dropped on him. It was the reason why Inoichi made sure that the boy never forgot his first name and his origins, even though he might have been happier not remembering. Inoichi agreed with the decision to tell Naruto. But there was a pretty serious catch. If you can convince the Hokage to give us the dispensation. I am not risking either of us being executed over bullshit charges, and you know there are people that would push it. Yes, dear. She stood, kissed him on the brow, and left. Yuki was what they called offensive imitator at the office. She could get into people's heads, not literally, like Inoichi, but figuratively, and act like their double or their mirror, whichever the mission required. For instance, she didn't have any exceptional talent for strategy, but she had once nearly beaten Shikaku at shogi simply by imitating him, in essence letting him play himself. Inoichi had no idea how she was doing it. It wasn't a Kekei Jinkai, just a very special skill that she had honed until it became a great weapon in the village's arsenal. He had literally delved into her mind a few times over the course of their relationship, and he still didn't have the first clue about how the trick worked. He did not ask how she did it this time when she came back from the Hokage office looking smug. He just accepted the scroll from her hand, and kissed that hand in mute adoration. Yoshi asked, frowning, by nine-tailed fox you mean the demon that attacked Konoha 9 years ago? Yuki and Inoichi nodded. Daikoku-sensei said that Yondaime-sama killed the demon? That is not entirely correct, admitted Yuki. It's what we call historical negationism dash. So, like, a lie that sounds better than the truth? Yoshi suggested. Written by the victor sort of thing? Inoichi was still waiting for the blow-up. This discussion was far too calm and light-hearted for such a heavy and upsetting topic. Yoshi's hand rose to tug at his hair, encountered air, and with belated realization moved to tug at his still new ponytail instead. So that's why I came to you that way, huh? And why people still sometimes say that stuff. He bit his lip. Inoichi took a deep breath and braced himself. Yuki simply nodded. So, who else knows? Are they gonna take me away when I'm a ninja? Absolutely not, Yuki snapped. You're our son, and they can take you out of our cold, dead dash. Dear, Inoichi hissed. Cold and dead was still frighteningly possible if the wrong people caught wind that Yoshi was Naruto. Hokage-sama knows. Shikaku and Chuza do. I am not sure about Yoshino and Mayu. Yes, Yuki confirmed. And that's it, Yoshi. Please keep it that way. I promise, Yoshi said quietly. I don't want to be taken away. Inoichi hoped the blow-up would not be literal. And if it was, that Yoshi would not get caught. There were no literal explosions. There was some shockingly defamatory graffiti all over the Hokage mountain, but the perpetrator had not been identified. When Shikamaru decided to follow the one-eyed Jounin around, and was summarily ditched by Chuji, who said he was too hungry to do anything before he had had dinner, he had expected to witness some more suspicious behavior, and maybe have to report to Irika-sensei about an adult man that had no business hanging around the Shinobi Academy. The rundown izakaya was exactly the kind of place where this Jounin would fit in. Shikamaru had not expected that the man would be waved over to join Inoichi-ji-san and presented with a cup of sake. Oh fine. Obviously, people knew about this creeper, and that meant that Shikamaru didn't have to do anything. Cool. He could go home, cloud watch while there was still a little light, and not think about what certain someone was doing right now at all. How many psychological problems are too many, and can I afford a stalking charge? Asked the one-eyed Jounin with the kind of sarcasm that was a cover for seriousness. Shikamaru only recognized the tone because this was exactly how his parents argued, both were masters of passive aggressiveness. You're already pushing the limit, Inoichi-ji-san replied gravely. He must have recognized that tone too. There were a handful of instances when the only thing that kept you from being decommissioned was Hokage-sama's guilt. Ouch, the Jounin said dryly. Inoichi-ji-san sighed. I spoke with Ibiki-kun dash. Oh? The Jounin cut in, tone changing from dry to acerbic. Yes, so I know what this is about. And I would love to see you form an emotional tie. I would. I think it would do you a world of good. But if you're in this just to stir shit, don't. And if I mean it? The other man inquired nonchalantly. Shikamaru wondered if this was just how Jounin communicated, in outright lies and mocking, and words that never meant what they seemed to mean. It did make sense. It also sounded like far too much effort. He was definitely following in his mum's footsteps and remaining Chunin for life. Preferably in an administrative position. But not at the Hokage Tower. He had seen what mission's desk duty did to people. You're an intelligent man, Kakashi, said Inoichi-ji-san, while the other man drained his cup and set it onto the counter with a quiet clack, however much you try to hide it. If you want an actual human connection, you won't get it from stalking. Go home and think about it. Yeah. I guess we gave our little stalker enough to think about. See you round, Taicho. He slid off his chair and ambled out of the izakaya, past Shikamaru, catching Shikamaru's eye for just a moment, but even that was enough to make sure that Shikamaru knew he was the little stalker in question. Get in here, snapped Inoichi-san. Shikamaru contemplated the pros and cons of running for the hills, but if he pissed off Inoichi-san, chances were that he would regret it very much. Between his parents and Ino, it wasn't worth it. He slunk inside the bar, took stock of all the drunks lounging around the place, and then climbed up onto the bar stool next to Ino's father. He set his forearms on top of the bar and pillowed his chin on them. He'd point out that he was too young and too civilian to be in this place, but it wasn't as though Inoichi-san wasn't aware of that, so why waste words? He's not a danger to anyone at the academy, but good catch, kid. Shikamaru blinked. And blinked. This wasn't what he had thought the man would say. Apropos, said Inoichi-san. Shikamaru warily glanced sideways at him. Surely this was a golden opportunity to lay into him regarding, well, all that stuff that he was trying not to think about. Which was hard, because the Yamanaka were loud, and he spent the days in class with them. Inoichi-san seemed entirely preoccupied with his sake. Shikamaru could probably say something first. He should say something. But what? Inoichi-san sipped and hummed. Shikamaru swallowed dry. He wasn't going to mention that thing he didn't want to talk about. Not at all. If Inoichi-san wanted to discuss it, he would have to bring it up himself. Inoichi-san idly swirled the liquid in his half-empty cup. Shikamaru realized he was sweating. His mind kept offering up excuses he could use in an increasingly panicked internal voice. All were at least somewhat plausible. He could explain. He could apologize. He could beg for forgiveness. Inoichi-san hummed again. He looked at Shikamaru, one corner of his mouth lifted. I trust one have made myself clear? Shikamaru nodded and fled. Finally, Ino exclaimed. She was all jittery, clutching a notebook with a bunch of sparkly butterflies on the cover to her chest. Let's start, Daddy. Are you going to teach us how to tell if somebody lies? How do you always know? And can we learn to make somebody despair and want to kill themselves? There's this girl in the year above us dash. Slow down, daughter, Dad cut her off. Sit before you wear a groove into the floor. You too, Yoshi. The study of the mind is an incredibly complex and comprehensive undertaking. It will take you a lifetime, and you will still have more questions than answers in the end dash. But mindfuck, Daddy. Where did you even hear that word? Dad exclaimed. Ino blinked at him innocently. Dad groaned and sank into an armchair. He covered his eyes with his hand, as though he was getting a headache. Stop it before he postpones training again, Naruto whispered into his sister's ear. Don't use that word, Ino. Not until you're at least a genin. And even then have a really good story about where you learned it, and it better not be at home. Yes, Daddy, Ino assured him sweetly. They knew the Nara scapegoats were plentiful. Dad sat up, planted his feet wide and leaned forwards. It was a little scary, just him, sitting there, looking grave and cold like he never usually got at home. You're kids, so I'm easing you into it. Yes, Ino, I know you are talented, but talent gets you nowhere without knowledge and practice. So, let's start close to home. Who is the best ninja in your class? Sasuke-kun. Ino replied immediately. He's strong and serious and has the best marks in everything except flower arranging, because boys don't have the flower arranging class. I am the best one in that, she added, beaming. Dad accepted that answer and turned to Naruto. Yoshi? Aburame Shino. Hands down. Quiet, observant, could fade into the background so completely that people didn't notice him or forgot he was there, with high marks in all subjects, but no first place in anything. Sasuke made it easier for him by stealing almost all the first places, but Naruto was pretty sure that even if Sasuke wasn't there, Shino still wouldn't have been first in anything. Ugh, that freak. Ino, that word does not mean what you think it means. You were saying, Yoshi? Naruto shrugged. I guess Shikamaru is pretty good too, or could be if he tried, but he just doesn't ever try. And Naruto tried not to notice him so much, because it hurt. Sasuke-kun has the best scores of our whole year. Ino argued, waving about her sparkly notebook with its sharp edges, making Naruto duck to avoid having an eye stabbed out. He'll be the rookie of the year when we graduate. Exactly, Naruto drawled. Dad asked about the best ninja, you know? Not the best academy student. Which, yeah, is totally Uchiha Sasuke. He tests good. Well, Dad corrected. Of angst, Naruto punned. He's cuckoo, Dad dash. Don't say such things about Sasuke-kun, idiot brother. Ino waved her notebook again, this time intentionally using it as a weapon. Naruto leaned backwards, away from her, and stuck out his tongue. The truth hurts, Ikamatsu-chan. Enough. Sorry, Dad. Yeah, sorry, Dad. Conclusion? Dad crossed his arms and raised an eyebrow. Naruto huffed and puffed up his cheeks. He knew why he couldn't claim that the best ninja was himself, but it wasn't for a lack of effort. I suck at the fading into background trick, but I'm pretty good at being noticed but dismissed. Serviceable. Ino? I've sold the Sasuke-kun idea already, she reported proudly, with reason, because Ino could actually claim that she was the best kunoichi. Not that the competition was tough there. We're forming an official fan club, and of course I'll be the president, because there's nobody as pretty and cool as me in class. Hyuga is prettier, Naruto pointed out. And, face it, Uchiha's prettier too. Ino shrugged. Sasuke-kun is perfect, so I can take it. We'll make beautiful babies. But Hinata has to die. Or, do you think extensive scarring would be sufficient? I can disfigure her in, like, an afternoon dash. Ino, Dad snapped, if your persona starts leaking into your personality, I'll take you to the hard and fast decompression program. I thought that one was only for ANBU? It is. Because sometimes people break in it. But we have a limit for acceptable losses, and my technicians are very good at staying below it. I'll take the chance. Ino and Naruto exchanged a worried look. Their dad wouldn't really. Shikamaru thought the academy was a waste of time that could have been better spent sleeping. Not that he didn't sleep a lot there, but the teachers kept waking him up, the bastards. Irika-sensei threw chalk. It hurt. The classes continued being boring, zero surprise. The teachers continued catering to clan children over the civilian students, still zero surprise, and also crossing all lines of professionalism when it came to Uchiha Sasuke in particular. The children continued being stupid and noisy, imitating the Yamanaka who were naturally noisy and by now really good at pretending to be complete airheads, and there was a boy in the class whom Shikamaru managed to avoid pretty well for spending so much time in the same room with him. Only 3 more years of this. Now, if he could figure out how to maintain a henge while sleeping, he could fake being awake and avoid any more chalk bruises. Laziness was actually a very good motivator. Chapter 6, Like a Ninja. Tomorrow, Inoichi announced once the food was consumed, the argument concluded, and his children had stopped glaring at one another, starts your final year at the Shinobi Academy. Right, the wasted year, muttered Ino. She had tried to graduate early, citing boredom at the academy, which no one bought. Apparently even the lure of Uchiha Sasuke was so strong that she would not try to get out of being placed on a team with Shikamaru-kun and Chuji-kun. I do not doubt that you both could take the academy graduation exam today and pass dash. This was not entirely the truth, because Yoshi still could not seem to create a regular bunshin, but Inoichi was working on getting him a special dispensation. They let that rock kid graduate, so holding Yoshi back, because a practically useless genjutsu technique was below his limits was ridiculous. But you are not run-of-the-mill genin candidates. You are Yamanaka clansmen. He was pleased to see that both kids straightened and puffed up a little. So long as it didn't go to their heads. We're not gonna shame the clan, Dad. Yoshi exclaimed. Yash. Yeah, Dad. I'm, the best kunoichi in our year. She sighed. Not that it means I'll get the better team assignment, damn it. Inoichi let them enjoy the praise for a moment, before the cold shower came. You would not, however, pass my own requirements. The speed with which their faces fell was hilarious. Dad dash. But that's dash. Quiet. He ordered. You want me to regard you as ninja? Well, then it is time you started acting like ninja. You had been taught how to assess personalities and find weakness in enemies. Had you ever used this skill in practice? Daily, for Ino, grumbled Yoshi. What was that? Inoichi demanded. Mulishly, Ino raised her chin. School is a battlefield, Daddy. I have done what I had to earn the respect of my peers. Dash. Fear, corrected Yoshi. The word is fear. Ino shrugged to indicate that she did not perceive the difference. Inoichi knew her though, and he did not want to be here for hours repeating lectures the kids knew by heart, so he skipped over this facetiousness on his daughter's part. And you, Yoshi? Here and there, mostly on the bullies, Yoshi said. I prefer the other side of things, Dad. I find weaknesses in my allies and patch them up. I kinda like it when people like me. And they do. Inoichi took a moment to reflect upon this, and then nodded. Well done, both of you. To conclude your elementary clan training, each of you will have to complete a project. You are allowed consultations, but you personally will have to be the one to perform all practical aspects. He had hoped for a little anxiety out of them, but, as was usual for them, they went straight for excitement. Give them a challenge, and nothing would stop them. What kind of project, Dad? Ooh, do we get to break people's minds? Ino twisted her ponytail around her palm. We're a little young for enemy conversion. You're still civilians, Inoichi reminded them. I am not letting you anywhere near enemies. I'll make do with that Ueda bitch that failed graduation. I heard she's coming back this year. Bet I can make her quit in a month. Dash. Don't terrorize your classmates, Inoichi admonished, but without much feeling. His princess knew better than to get caught, so it was no skin off his nose. No, your assignment is this: choose a classmate that has the potential to be a strong ninja, a credit to the village, but is being hampered by a psychological disorder. You will help them overcome their psychological problems, or at least ameliorate them to the point that they will be ready for service. They looked at one another, wide-eyed. Admittedly, this task played more to Yoshi's strengths, but Inoichi was not willing to set these hellions loose on an ally with the intention to harm. And he had faith in Ino. You may choose your own subject. Some disorders or traumas are more difficult to deal with, and at this stage, I will not make you interact with someone whom you dislike. As I said, you can consult with each other, myself, any of our clansmen, or the library. Yoshi's face scrunched up in thought. Can we talk to other people? Not like a consultation, but what if we need to find out something about the subject, and we've got to ask their friends or family. Dash. You may not reveal the true purpose of your questioning to them, Inoichi cut him off. Intelligence gathering is within your skill set, and I am not limiting your creativity. What is the actual definition of disorder here? Asked Ino. Say I wanted to make Shikamaru into a ninja because he could be strong if he just dash. No, Inoichi sighed, you may not hit someone until they overcome their problems out of sheer self-preservation. That is physical abuse, punishable by law, and with extremely damaging consequences even if you manage to cure the initial problem. Which you know. Ino shrugged, tugging on her fistful of hair. But Daddy, I just want to help my future teammate be the best he can be. She pouted. Save it. Inoichi saw the gleam in her eye and added, conversely, you may not extort your other future teammate into starving himself. And, before either of you gets any bright ideas, you may not choose one another as your subject even though, Izanagi knows, each of you is a therapist's nightmare. They wilted, brilliant notion dashed before it could even occur to them. That was the trouble with clever children, the little shitheads found loopholes in everything. Psychological disorder, Inoichi said, because that was actually a good question, for the purpose of this exercise, is one of those defined in Chapter 4 of Yakushi-sensei's Comprehensive Encyclopedia of Malaise. So, what can we not do? Asked Yoshi, bouncing back to his previous worrisome glee. You may not be caught breaking laws, Inoichi said hastily. If you are, I don't know you, never met you in my life and project. What project? Acknowledged, Yoshi replied, grinning. You may not negate your efforts by damaging your subject. Or, I suppose, damaging them further. The goal here is to help create a sufficiently stable ninja. They nodded. You may not damage anybody else, example, if you know someone is being bullied, you will not beat up the bullies to make them stop. I don't like bullies. What, am I supposed to just let them do their thing and walk past? Dad, that's kinda majorly not okay dash. Yoshi, Inoichi sighed. If they bully anybody but your subject, do what you want. Don't get caught. If they bully your subject, get the subject to solve the problem. Don't do it for them. Coddling somebody does not help them get strong. Ah, Daddy, you know you love to spoil us dash. You're a pair of headaches and I'm swapping you with Hayashi-san's kids tomorrow. He'll see through your bullshit in 1 second flat and put you to task, and I'll be left with 2 well-behaved children. You'll get a fainting, stuttering mess and a little robot girl, Ino pointed out. Which, sadly, was fair. Inoichi had met the girls at a few social functions, which was the extent of Ino's familiarity with Hanabi-chan too, and the description fit the observations. Hayashi was right to be concerned. Inoichi at least did not have to be afraid that the world would roll over his children. Ino and Yoshi were going to be the ones to roll over the world. And possibly set it on fire afterwards, but most likely they would tolerate being universally feared and adored. Finally they were asleep. Inoichi went straight for the Nara clan house. Yoshino had the best stash of alcohol, and he needed to drink until he could forget that he had done this to himself willingly. Thank you. Yoshi said, bowing. Please come again. I definitely will, Yamanaka-kun, said the jounin, saluting with the bouquet he had just purchased. One of these days she'll crack, and let me take her out. And when she does, remember that you've got to continue showing your appreciation, Ayaka called out after him. There was no sense in losing a customer just because the girl would finally cave. She spun on her heel and scrutinized her shop assistant. In all honesty, he was way beyond assisting, but Ayaka had never liked leaving him alone. Now, tell your Nachon what's got you all glum today. I don't think I've seen you smile once. Just a lot on my mind, he said evasively. Midori-sensei as well? Growing greener every day, Yoshi confirmed, not that there was any doubt that his beloved Monstera flourished, given how fiercely he protected her from any potential harm. Are you missing Yuki-san a lot? Is Ino being a brat again? Yoshi-kun shook his head. Inoichi-sama working you hard? No, okay, yes, but that's fine. I like training hard. It's just these instructions. I'm trying to figure out what they mean. Ayaka knelt down by the buckets of roses and started picking up a few that would go well together, and maybe save another poor guy in love that couldn't express himself by opening mouth and speaking words. Want some help with that? Nachon, if somebody tells you to act more like a ninja, what does that mean? We've learnt the shinobi code at the academy, but it doesn't make a lot of sense, and I don't think anybody really obeys it strictly. Or do they? Ayaka had no clue. She was a Jinnin herself and didn't have any ambitions of advancing. She liked her work, both at the R&D and here, and the shinobi code did not really feature in her life. I guess maybe the ANBU? Or if there's a war. Yoshi-kun came over to hand her a piece of string, so she could tie the roses and the greens together. He also brought a ribbon, not the color Ayaka herself would have chosen, but orange went well with the roses too. How do I be more ninja-like? I guess I could be more serious. Would that help? Maybe, Ayaka allowed. He was a brat, especially when he was around his sister. Somehow, they were 10 times worse together than individually, but he was 11, so that was to be expected. So long as you focus on your training, I think you'll be okay. Yoshi-kun let this percolate for a bit, and then nodded determinedly. Thank you, Ne-chan. Yoshi-kun. Called out Ami. Yoshi-kun. Keiko stood by Ami's side. We're leaving. Ino-chan is waiting outside dash. Naruto smiled sheepishly and tugged on his ponytail. I'm so sorry. I can't come today. Next time, okay? Keiko pouted. Promise? Cross my heart. He mimed an X over his chest, and waved at the dejected girls as they went to join Ino, and go descend on the ice cream stall like a swarm of locusts. He liked ice cream. And dango. It wasn't as good as ramen, but he enjoyed getting it. He missed the times when he used to go with Shikamaru and Choji, back when a little bit of Naruto still showed on the outside, before all the wasabi swallowed him up completely, just how Mum taught him, but that was a childish thing to dwell on, and anyway, he had studying to do. There was a chapter of the comprehensive encyclopedia of Malays waiting for him at home, and then he would have to revise the shinobi code and once more try to figure out how much of it was meant seriously, and which rules were put there just to show to the civilians that shinobi were hardarses. So far he was only sure about the no crying one. He would make his family and his clan proud, and act like a proper ninja. Yoshi-kun? Inoue called out through the shop's door. Have you got time? Inoichi stood to go and see what his sister needed, but a blonde streak flashed past him. I thought you were busy, he remarked, entering the shop on his son's heels at a more sedate pace. It's just extracurricular reading, Dad, Yoshi said, flashing him a quick and empty smile. I can do it later. Inoue frowned. If you've got schoolwork, dash. No, the boy assured her, this is just something I picked up at the library. It can wait. The shop is important. Inoichi's sense of bullshit raised up an alarm. If you're sure, dash. Sure, I'm sure, Dad, his son said lightly, and let Inoue direct him to Greenhouse 7, where some finicky lilies were driving Sayuri to tears. Inoue, too, was disconcerted. And I send dash. He can make his own decisions, Inoichi assured her. If he bites off more than he can chew, it will be a worthwhile life lesson. Since they didn't actually have anything to talk about, and the vague idea of playing had lost last vestiges of appeal years ago, Shikamaru, Choji and Ino usually spent Saturdays getting their homework done. This arrangement had several advantages. It helped pass the time they were forced to spend together, it gave them a reason to interact, they could pool their resources, and they got rid of it and then could spend their actual free time as they wished. For example, watching clouds. Shikamaru definitely preferred contemplating clouds to copying basic seals. He groaned and let himself fall backwards onto the grass. The open textbook blocked out the sun, and he could claim he was reading. Sleep on your own time. Ino snapped. Don't waste mine. What a pain. I hate you. Ino hissed. I hate you, and the council, and this stupid idea of this stupid team dash. Ino? Choji cut her off. He set his pen down on top of his notebook, and gave her his full attention. What's wrong? More wrong than usual, Shikamaru added, because they had already heard every variation of the rant about the stupidity of repeating the Ino Shikacho configuration as if they were clones of their fathers, and a lot of complaining about Uchiha Sasuke's lack of appreciation for Ino's, as of yet lack of, feminine wiles. Nothing, Ino told Chuji. Then she turned to Shikamaru and said, about 1,000 times chillier, nothing. You're an annoying, stupid, self-centered bitch, but that's not new. She shoved her books and notes into a flower-decorated bag, slung it over her shoulder, grabbed her sandals, and barefoot made her way toward the Akimichi house. Was she looking into a mirror? Shikamaru mused, staring after his pissed-off fellow Saturday inmate. She seemed normal at school yesterday, Chuji pointed out. Or, normal for Ino. She did, Shikamaru agreed. She had seemed normal. It was Yoshi that had been acting off. Yamanaka Yoshi was asleep and drooling onto a book. A library book, in fact, as Irika determined when he sat down next to the boy in the shadow of a tree. The view from the Hokage mountain was amazing and few people ever came up here, so he completely understood why someone might choose this place to study. People other than Yamanaka Yoshi, that was. This boy was so intensely social that just seeing him alone here seemed completely surreal to Irika. I'm so stupid. Irika jumped. Yoshi, shocked awake by his own exclamation, jumped too. For a moment they both stared at one another, coming down from the sudden adrenaline surge. Then they dissolved into giggles. Say sensei, what are you doing here? I could ask you the same, Yamanaka-kun. The boy raised his slightly wet book in both self-defense and explanation. Huh. Irika felt his eyebrows rise. I didn't know you were interested in philosophy. Wouldn't have guessed it. Yoshi-kun made a face. Nah. It's so boring, Irika-sensei. Every time I open it and try to read, it puts me right to sleep. How could this guy even stay awake long enough to write it? Irika choked. Mainly because this guy was, according to the book's cover, Sarutobi Hiruzen-sama. Why force yourself into reading it then? Yoshi-kun groaned and flopped down dramatically. Because I'm stupid. He pinned Irika with a liquid blue stare that could have melted the heart of a granite statue. Now, Irika-sensei, you won't tell anybody, right? Irika grinned. As long as nobody's getting hurt, I will keep everything you tell me in confidence. Somebody told me that if I wanted to be treated like ninja, I had to act more like a ninja. That makes sense, right? I thought it did. But then I started thinking, how does a ninja act? It seems like every ninja acts different. So, I looked for what they have in common, and I haven't found anything. Oh dear. Irika's eyes slid to the abused library book. It was, indeed, Sandaime-sama's monograph on the realities of ninja life, and the philosophy of developing a personal nindo in compliance with the will of fire. But Yoshi-kun continued, this time more enthusiastic, right now when I was sleeping it just came to me. I don't have to act like every ninja. I just have to act like the ninja that is treated like how I want to be treated. So, I pick one and imitate them. Irika tried to imagine his 11-year-old student spending his entire life undercover as a creepy double of some other shinobi. Considering who his mother was, the boy might have had the skill to pull it off too. Irika shivered. Let's think this through a bit more, Yamanaka-kun. I think you might be putting too much emphasis on how this theoretical shinobi is treated and not enough on how he acts. Also disregarding environmental effects such as family background, rank, specialization and personal history, all of which heavily affected the social status, impression made and response garnered. Oh. Yoshi-kun reflected on this for a moment and then brightened up again. Oh. So, I shouldn't pick someone based on how they're treated. I'll pick someone that acts the way I think is right for a shinobi. Yes, Irika agreed, afraid that if he let this exchange continue, he would get completely tangled in the twisty reasoning. And, if I can make a recommendation, make your goals realistic. Yoshi-kun grinned cheekily. So, I shouldn't start acting like Hokage-sama, huh? You even think of smoking before you make chunin, Yamanaka-kun, and I'll tattle on you to your clan head. Thank Izanagi. Ino wailed dramatically when Naruto fell through the door. Are you back to normal now, idiot brother? I'm sorry I'm late. Naruto thrust forward a note. I had a private consultation with Irika-sensei. His dad took the note with suspicion, perused it carefully, as if Naruto would ever dare try and give the former head of TNI a counterfeit teacher's note. He was intermittently stupid, not suicidal, and then nodded. As long as you're not in trouble. I'm not. Naruto assured him. I was just having trouble with some of my reading, and he helped me clear up a few points. He smiled widely, aware that his audience knew he was fibbing, but counting on them to let it lie. They had training to get to. Ino's jaw dropped. You can read? Naruto rolled his eyes. You can start by reporting on the status of your project, Yoshi, Dad said with a bit of condescension that felt like a cold shower. Naruto guessed he once again wasn't acting ninja-like. He promised himself he would do better in the future. I haven't picked yet, Dad. I wanted to do Shino Dash. You wanted to do Shino? Ino repeated, mock scandalized. Naruto scoffed. I know you've got your head full of what's under Sasuke-kun's clothes, but some of us don't actually spend every waking moment dash. Dad smacked his hand against the table. Naruto realized that he had already broken his promise to himself. But Ino made it so hard to stay all calm and serious. She was really good at getting a rise out of him. At least he could do it right back to her. Why have you decided not to select Aburame-kun as your subject? Dad asked. Because I haven't managed to find anything at all wrong with him. I mean, he comes across as antisocial, but that's mostly the hide and the creepy self-control and, okay, it's the glasses a little bit too. Naruto grumbled. I'm still doing research. So far, he seems disappointingly well-adjusted. But the not speaking and the glasses and the coat, it just bugs me. Ino scowled at him, but Dad snorted. That dash Ino waved her hand as if she was swatting a fly, and thus indicated the secret Aburame techniques involving the Kakachu. Is so, ugh. What is it with girls and bugs? Naruto wondered. And not just bugs, but all sorts of things are yurd. Do you just not know how to have fun? Fun. We have fun. Ino protested, but she was probably thinking about giggling over shoujo manga or admiring Sasuke-kun's assets, so that didn't count. Their dad just raised his eyebrows for a moment, and then pulled out a book of logic puzzles. Apparently he had given up on getting them to do something constructive today. Naruto twirled a shuriken at the tip of his index finger and pouted. It's shocking people ever even have kids. The way girls talk about boys and boys talk about girls, you'd think everybody would prefer to be in a gay relationship. Except maybe those hopeless guys that kept the shop in business. I'm going to marry Sasuke-kun. Ino informed anybody willing to listen, which was nobody, because Mum was out of town and Dad had already put his foot down regarding an alliance with the Uchiha clan. Also, Naruto wasn't sure if Sasuke counted as a boy for the purposes of this conversation. Really, the girls treated him more like a life-size doll. Are you trying to tell me something, son? Inquired Dad. Naruto shrugged. I don't think it's that I like boys. I just like people who are both kind and strong, and I don't know any girl like that. What? Ino snapped. Naruto eyeballed her. Maybe you could help Hyuga-chan get a little stronger, and then we'd have one. Are you blind? Daughter, are you convincing your brother that he should be romantically interested in you? Ino shuddered. So did Naruto. But at least he finally figured out why she had been so offended. You're not kind, sisterer. You could be if you wanted to, you just never bother with it. And before you try to suggest your pink shadow as a substitute, she punches people out of frustration. Not kind. Is she gonna be your project? 'Cause she needs psychological help almost as badly as Hyuga-chan does. You're an arse too. She proclaimed and slammed the door behind herself on the way out. Although she could still be heard yelling, I'm washing my hands off you. Naruto shook his head in mock despair. Girls. So, said his dad, the Aburame boy, huh? Naruto bit the inside of his cheek. It wasn't like he was, whatever. Just that coat. Those glasses. Years in the same classroom, and he had never seen the guy's face. Barely heard him speak too, and that was mostly when Shino was called on by a teacher to answer a question. Puns aside, it was really bugging Naruto something fierce. A corner of his dad's mouth quirked up. Just tell me before you decide to start experimenting. What, do I get some kind of specialized clan talk? Dad's mouth stretched to a full smirk. Yes. You do. Chapter 7, The Selection. Watch this, Ino whispered to Sakura and pulled the girl against her side. This way it looked like they were quietly gossiping, but they could at the same time watch the very interesting development on the other end of the classroom. Hi, Shino-kun, said Yoshi in his friendly and interested in you voice, which was known to make girls fall for him over the course of a single conversation. The quiet boy reached up and adjusted his sunglasses. What, he said slowly, do you want? Yoshi kept smiling, as if the mere fact that Bug Boy deigned speak to him made him really happy. I wondered if you wanted to do something after school. Like, together. The two of us, I mean. I realized we've never even really talked, and it's such a shame. I mean, we might be on a team together, and we should use the opportunity to get to know each other, don't you think? Sakura shivered against Ino's side. He's good at this, isn't he? Ino whispered. Look at Shino stunned under the onslaught of cheer and friendliness. Sakura mumbled, what does Yoshi-kun want with him really? That's the trick in it, Ino replied. Yoshi really wants to get to know him. Maybe get to know him too. Sakura shivered again, fists clenching and pressing to her belly, face growing red. Sure, Shino? And why not? Ino inquired. It's not for me, but there's certainly the element of mystery. She watched Sakura's face as Sakura's eyes traveled over the bulky coat, and she realized that she couldn't even guess at Shino's body type, nor at anything else except his hair color. I do not think that would be a good idea, Shino said mechanically. Why? Because you have no logical reason to approach me. I told you my logical reason, Yoshi countered, smile dimming. He half sat on top of Shino's desk and leaned close, maybe close enough to see a little bit through the sunglasses. Shino flinched away. Hey, I'm sorry, Yoshi placated him, hands raised, palms out. I didn't mean to startle you. I just really wanted to talk to you, and it's so hard to do that when you don't talk in words, and you don't talk in body language either, and I can't see your eyes. He hunched over, appearing sad and guilty. Do not concern yourself, Shino suggested, confused about how to deal with this. I'm sorry, Yoshi repeated plaintively. It was a devastating tactic. I must attend training with my father, Shino said hesitantly, but I will have a short time after our lessons conclude today. Yoshi sprang up and beamed. Really? That's great. See you then. And he bounded off back to his seat. Poor Shino, all confused about what just happened to him, Ino whispered Sakura, grinning. But she was actually looking one row up from Shino, to where Shikamaru was for once not pretending to be asleep at all. Yash! Naruto would get to pick Shino's brain about how to act like a shinobi. That problem solved, he could shift his attention to the pressing issue of the project. Who to pick? Nope, not the fangirl. You couldn't even have a real conversation with most of them. They were like Ino-programmed puppets, or like radios tuned to one channel that played the same song all over again, and the dial was broken, and they were aggressive. It would have been a challenge, but Naruto was not that much of a masochist. Besides, Ino already controlled that group, so it would be like a doomed attempt at poaching. The Minakawa girl had been treated by a regular psychologist and seemed to be doing perfectly fine, even though she still didn't socialize more than she had to. A loner by nature, that one. Oh, too bad Shino was so mentally healthy. Naruto could really enjoy stripping layers off that guy. His mind. Naruto meant stripping layers off Shino's mind. Of course. Rio for them, said Shikamaru, dropping heavily into the next seat. Naruto blinked at the boy. They did not have assigned seating in class, except sometimes Kiba, because once in a while Kiba needed a swat, and in order to sit in a firm voice, and then Irika-sensei preferred to have him within arm's reach, but this was still a very unusual spot for Shikamaru to take. Especially since they hadn't spoken a word directly to one another in about 3 years. Naruto wasn't sure what this meant. Was Shikamaru not mad at him anymore? Could they be friends again? And did Naruto even want to risk it? What if Shikamaru got angry and decided to leave Naruto in the cold again? It had been heartbreaking the first time around, and he was feeling twice shy. Maybe 3 times shy. It had really hurt. A lot. And that was probably why Naruto said an "oh, hey," and pasted on a grin. Shikamaru looked unimpressed. Or maybe sleepy. Naruto continued grinning and not saying anything, but made it a point to shift mental gears, because for a non-Yamanaka, Shikamaru was kind of a little too good at mind reading. Shikamaru sighed, stuck his hand into his pocket, rooted around in there, and then put an actual Rio on the desk in front of Naruto. Naruto nearly fell over laughing. Once he got a hold of himself, he pocketed the coin, propped his chin in his palm, and admitted, "I've been contemplating the relative tolerability of our classmates." Shikamaru didn't look unimpressed anymore. If anything, he looked pleased with himself. Isn't it a little early to try and figure out team assignments? That was a logical leap, especially in light of what he had said to Shino earlier, and Naruto happily ran with it. That depends on who's talking, doesn't it? It's not like you have to worry. Yes, Shikamaru agreed, no hope for me. Thrown into the pit of despair before I could say a word in self-defense. Better you than me, Naruto replied, even though he would actually switch with Shikamaru in a heartbeat. They both found themselves glancing to where Ino was presiding over her marionettes. A moment later Ino signaled Sakura. Sakura elbowed Kenji in the ribs, making it seem almost like an accident. Kenji cried out and stumbled into the way of Hinata. Hinata tripped over her own feet and nearly took a header into the corner of the nearest desk. Would have hit it too, but Ino was already there and catching her. "Hinata-chan!" she cried, overwrought with concern. "Are you okay? You should be more careful." Then she rounded on Kenji, who was rubbing his side. "Look where you're going, dummy. Hinata-chan could have been hurt." Shikamaru sighed and shook his head. "So overacted," Naruto agreed. "Ino still does not believe in moderation." The sad thing was that they could already see it working. Hyuga-chan stammered, blushed and hunched in on herself, hopelessly embarrassed, but she let Ino's grip on her arm guide her to her customary seat and accepted the subsequent fawning. She didn't even question, and when Ino just took over the next seat, usually occupied by one of the fringe girls, who would of course let the president of their club have whatever she wanted. "Troublesome," Shikamaru muttered. Naruto agreed, although not for the same reason. He wasn't worried about what Ino might do to or with Hyuga-chan. Ino was plain better than Naruto at the clan teachings. It was a little flattering too, maybe. Naruto didn't doubt that his sister had picked Hyuga-chan as her project primarily to prove him wrong, but the fact remained that she had picked her because Naruto had suggested her. The downside of this was that Naruto's competitiveness demanded that he would pick someone just as damaged, or worse off. And there was only one such person in this class. He looked over to where Uchiha Sasuke brooded in his personal cone of darkness and angst and despaired. "Why did you manipulate me into spending time with you?" Shino opened the conversation after Yamanaka Yoshi ran out of the academy building and discovered the spot that Shino had deemed optimal for waiting. Here he was clearly visible, and yet out of the direct path of the departing students. "'Cause you said no when I asked," Yamanaka-san replied easily and, as far as Shino could tell, honestly. Shino was well aware that both Yamanaka children in their class were liars, not so much by habit as by training. They were not quite flawless yet, but they had mastered techniques of emotional manipulation that allowed them to cover up small mistakes without detriment to their goals. I see, Shino agreed. He accepted the suggestion conveyed by Yamanaka-san's body language and fell into step with him, letting him lead the way up the street. Why did you ask? Yamanaka-san cast a short, fast look over his shoulder at Shino, revealing the rising of color in his face. It's a little embarrassing. So, I hope you won't tell other people. Although, if you do, I'm sure I'll survive. Shino understood. It was the investment of disclosing sensitive intelligence, with the sensitivity determined as mildly harmful yet not truly damaging. An offer of alliance, perhaps, or otherwise a test of whether trust was an option. I shall consider keeping the information you share in confidence, he countered. Do you like dango? And your bugs? Do they like it? Shino blinked, although his spectacles prevented the lapse from being obvious. I find several types of dango satisfactory. My Kakachu, however, only consume raw chakra. Is it impolite to offer them me to feed on? Shino initially assumed that this was some form of jest. Yamanaka-san was not laughing, however, and all the usual markers for sincerity were present in his expression and posture. That is an unusual proposal. Why? Yamanaka-san continued smiling. I've got a lot of chakra. It's why I suck at genjutsu. It's a lot harder for me to control small amounts. But if they're hungry, they can snack on me while we snack on dango, yeah? Shino nodded, struggling not to display his present discombobulation. For the second time today, Yamanaka-san had thrown him off balance. Your offer is welcome. I will instruct them clearly and monitor them to ensure that you are not harmed, Shino promised. Was that sufficient reassurance? It seemed to be. Don't look so stiff, Shino-kun. Yamanaka-san bade him. I'm really curious. I don't know much about insects, except how to keep them away from flowers. That's just part of business, don't take it personally. Out in the nature they're all welcome to eat whatever, but we really can't afford to let them into the shop. We'd lose customers. That is logical, Shino agreed, wondering how he had allowed his equilibrium to be stolen and whether he would be capable of recovering it in the near future. What was it like? Really interesting, Naruto assured the marionettes. He had gotten a lot of the intel he had been after, the way Shino thought, what he imagined was the right way for a ninja to act, and even what especially annoyed him and his peers and thus made it difficult to control the bugs. It seemed like Shino hadn't ever had the chance to talk about any of this to anybody outside of his clan, and once Naruto got him going the dam had burst. And a lot of intel Naruto hadn't even been after had poured out too. He knows all sorts of things about insects, and also about plants, so we've got a bunch of stuff to talk about. We're going out again next week. Eek. Naruto flushed. Oh. Oops. He hadn't intended this, but it was too good not to use. Not like a date. He waved his hands like he was panicking. Just a friend date. They're totally dating, someone whispered in the crowd, loud enough to carry. Ino's club was an odd mix of girls who pretended to like Sasuke to get closer to Yoshi-kun, and those who genuinely liked Sasuke and kind of accepted that Yoshi was one of them, although as of yet nobody commented on Naruto's lack of interest in Sasuke. That would soon change, he was sure. He could already imagine the rumors of him cheating on Shino with Sasuke-kun. This was either going to be the most fun he had ever had, or a complete nightmare. Ayano, muttered Hyuga-chan, we could ask Ino-san? Hyuga-chan was the exception to the Sasuke or Yoshi rule. She had already let Ino take her under her wing, and she seemed to think that Ino hung the moon, but she wasn't the type to fawn over anyone. Possibly did not have the confidence to put herself out there like that. She did, however, seem admirably dedicated to training and getting better at things that could save her life one day. What does Yoshi-kun see in him? wondered Keiko. It's up to us to find out, replied Ami. Fantastic, Naruto thought without a smidgen of sarcasm. He could use this. He could use this so well. It first occurred to Sasuke that he had unexpectedly acquired room to breathe on Tuesday afternoon. The last class ended, and Sasuke managed to exit the academy without fielding a single request for a date or an inquiry about his personal habits. This was unusual but not unprecedented, so he enjoyed the small reprieve that life provided and went home. On Wednesday he was a little more aware of the phenomenon after he realized that he had arrived at class without being accosted. Odd. Whatever had gotten into Konoha's water had lasted until today. Against his will, he started paying attention. After all, a ninja couldn't afford to be caught off guard. They were there. All of them. All the fangirls, led by the head fangirl and her pink-haired sidekick. But for some reason they were congregating on the other side of the classroom from Sasuke. Around Aburame. Boy Yamanaka appeared next to Sasuke, silent like a shadow and smiling that hair-raisingly friendly smile of his. He leaned down and said, very softly, "You're welcome, Sasuke-kun." Sasuke's head snapped around, and he stared at the girls and their new victim. Had Yamanaka done that on purpose? Why would he have? To get rid of the competition? But no, instead of asking for Sasuke's attention, or acknowledgement, or favorite food, the blonde just walked away. Or, rather, he tried to walk away. Grinning toothily, Inuzuka called out to him, "Shino hates you. You ruined his life." Me? Yamanaka looked hurt and offended. I just wanted to be friends. Is that why Uchiha's fans are suddenly all up on Shino? Inuzuka inquired in case anyone within earshot had not yet noticed. Yamanaka widened his eyes. I didn't mean to do that. I was just being friendly. Inuzuka snorted. Yeah, right. You're full of shit, Bleach Boy. The dog barked in agreement. Sasuke concurred. Her brother was being secretive and elusive, so Ino had to resort to drastic measures. She gathered up a few of the girls that honestly believed Yoshi was made of sunshine, and set up an ambush for him while he was in the bathroom. He walked into it blithely, had a moment of fight or flight indecision, and then pretended that it had all been his idea from the start. Ino planted a hand on her hip. Are you seriously ingratiating Sasuke-kun and reeling in Shikamaru just by screwing with Shino? I'm not screwing with Shino. We're just friends. Yoshi winked. The girls behind Ino made noises like they were about to faint. Ami squeaked. You glorious arsehole, Ino stated admiringly. Yoshi tugged on his ponytail. And what was that about Shikamaru? Don't even, she shut him off, raising her free hand. He could talk to that if he absolutely had to talk nonsense. Yoshi shrugged. His own fault. He could have been my best friend, if he didn't hold a stupid grudge for a stupid comment. And, whoa, Ino had thought her brother was long since over it, but apparently not. Also, the look Keiko and Ami shared suggested that Shikamaru would soon come to regret ever having in any way displeased Yoshi. Civilian-born they might have been, but their viciousness had carried them this far at the academy, and for their faithful service Ino would see them graduate, even if she had to tell Sakura to tutor them. Chapter 8, The Clan Kids. What is this? It's a bento box, Sasuke-kun, Naruto said, smiling guilelessly. Sasuke glared at him, conveying I know that, idiot without saying the words. Naruto blinked and raised his eyebrows, conveying then why are you asking, Sasuke-kun? Right back. The Uchiha turned away and tried to ignore Naruto the way he usually ignored the fangirls who, as a matter of fact, had repeatedly tried to butter him up with all manner of cute packed lunches. Naruto's advantages were that, 1, he wasn't emotionally invested in the bastard, and 2, he wasn't looking to become the bastard's house husband. So instead of being crushed by the indifference, Naruto just sat up on Sasuke's desk, deep enough into his personal bubble to be impossible to ignore, but not so deep as to seem actively threatening. He placed his palms on top of the desk and leaned back, watching the ceiling. Someone with a spitball launcher had used it as a target, with enthusiasm. Mom travels a lot. Dad works hard, so he doesn't have the time to pack us lunches every day, and anyway, he's not a very good cook. We used to get the store-bought ones, but then Ino and I decided to learn to cook at least a little. It's nothing special, but it's definitely edible. Sasuke glared at the apparently very offensive box in front of him. Did your sister make this? Naruto laughed. No. I made that one. I made one for myself too. I'm okay with switching if you're worried about poison, but I warn you, mine is actually cute. I made yours plain. Said Sasuke. This was to convey that he did not care and hoped that his lack of encouragement would cause Naruto to go away. Naruto deliberately misunderstood. You don't believe me? I'll show you. Prepare yourself for the onslaught of the cuteness. While Sasuke looked for any available escape routes, which were all handily blocked off by fangirls strategically stationed around the class, Naruto pulled his own bento box out of his bag and opened it. There was a cucumber toad sitting in between the onigiri. It was a little lopsided, but it made Naruto grin to see that it had survived the travel. There was a thunk. Naruto looked down and found Sasuke face planted into the desk, his hands covering his head. Go away and die, Mr. Doom and Gloom muttered to the piece of furniture. A lot of their classmates gave up pretending that they had not been watching the confrontation and burst into laughter, Kiba, and excited whispering, the fan club. Once the bento gambit had fallen through, at least Shikamaru assumed that it had fallen through, although he still wasn't sure what Yoshi had been after there. It didn't take long for the Yamanaka to devise a new strategy. Shikamaru had been watching Yoshi more closely than usual since his recruitment of Shino. Was Yoshi trying to collect the boys into his private army the way Ino had done it with the girls? And therefore noticed immediately when the signal had passed between the Yamanaka siblings. Ino moaned loudly and draped herself over the blushing Hinata's shoulder. Ugh, so boring, why didn't Dad let me graduate early? Yoshi grinned at Hinata and then rolled his eyes. Don't even try to pretend you're not having the time of your life. Hinata's breath hitched. She made an attempt to stammer something, but quieted when Ino stroked her hair. I could be having the time of my life in the field with the older Hyuga. He definitely needs a lot more help than Hinata-chan dash. But he doesn't take seriously anybody who can't beat him in a spar, Yoshi pointed out, smiling apologetically at Hinata, and Ino, even I can beat you 4 times out of dash. You're on. They went on bickering and segued into their typical dynamics so smoothly that Shikamaru was the only person in that room who had noticed that the argument had been staged. They had gotten better. Of course, they were always at their best when they could play off of one another. And Hinata, being touched in ways that skirted the line of friendliness and dipped into intimacy, took the focus away from the scam. Kiba was drooling shamelessly, and even Chuji had gone pink. Shikamaru had a little bit of home ground advantage though, plus he had heard all the original variations of Ino's complaints about being denied early graduation. Hey, Nara. Shikamaru raised his head from the desk, interested against his better judgment. Yes, Uchiha? Historically, Uchiha had only acknowledged Shikamaru's existence when they were assigned to train together, and even that was about the same amount of acknowledgement one might give a training post. Are there many in this class who could have already graduated? Asked Uchiha. Shikamaru's interest rose. Was this what the Terror Twins were after? Seeding the idea that there was a commonality between Uchiha and some of his peers? A few, Shikamaru said truthfully. The clan kids, mostly. Not Hyuga, probably, but both Yamanaka, Kiba, Chuji. Shino could have done it 3 years ago. Shino could also take Uchiha apart if they ever fought for real. Kakechu were generally vulnerable to Katan techniques, but Sasuke wasn't yet fast enough with his ninjutsu to seriously trouble a well-trained hive. Uchiha seemed thoughtful, still an anthropomorphic abyss of yawning darkness but a pensive one. You? Sure, but why would I? Shikamaru shrugged and slumped over his desk again. And why would you? By now we'd be chunin and getting ground down by work. What for? Early burnout? Early death, more like, grumbled Kiba, hiding behind his dog when Uchiha glared him into silence. Shikamaru sighed dolefully. I'd stretch this out for one more year, but Pops said if I throw the test again, he won't let me become a shinobi at all. That would mean learning a trade from scratch, which would be a pain in the arse. And it would have thrown a wrench into some of his long-term plans. Just for an instance he glanced to the side, where Yoshi was currently hamming up some Aburame-related embarrassment for the audience of Ino's bootlickers. Uchiha nodded in acknowledgement, apparently having exhausted his quota of words for the day, and slunk off back to his seat. Ino caught Shikamaru's eye across the classroom and grinned. Yoshi, standing next to her, was a little too busy chattering with their following to even notice how Shikamaru had assisted them. Shikamaru sighed again and closed his eyes. Chuji patted his back. Spar with me. Shino did not know how to react to being approached by Uchiha Sasuke. This had never happened to him before, and he would have preferred if it had not happened at all. Why? Uchiha-san crossed his arms in front of his chest. I heard that we're strong enough to graduate years ago. It doesn't show in taijutsu practice. I want to see how I measure up against you. Shino considered the proposal. While he suspected that the reasoning behind Uchiha-san's offer was flawed, the suggestion itself had merit. I find the academy style of taijutsu limited and unnecessary for my further career as a shinobi. My great-uncle is pleased with my progress with the Aburame taijutsu. Uchiha-san nodded. I'm learning the Uchiha Interceptor on my own time. The academy style is basic. Simplistic. It's easy. Shino suspected that, in the absence of acknowledgement at home, Uchiha-san had spared the time needed to master the academy taijutsu for the sole purpose of earning praise from his teachers. Understandable. If the emotional payoff was satisfactory, it did not constitute a waste of that time. I will request permission from my great-uncle for you to attend one of my lessons. If he grants it, I will spar with you under his supervision. Uchiha-san deliberated for a moment and eventually conceded with a laconic, "HN." How did it go? Naruto asked on the next day, shifting slightly as the bugs moving under his clothes tickled. He didn't mind the sensation, but he wasn't quite used to it yet. He wouldn't mind getting used to it, and Shino was one of the few people Naruto wanted to be genuine friends with, so it was more than worth it to endure. It wasn't like he even noticed the chakra they ate missing. Besides, ice cream. Even if Shino had to be creepy about it and ordered salted caramel. We are closely matched in taijutsu prowess, Shino said coolly. It is difficult to judge, we had not established a system of evaluation. Naruto didn't buy it as an honest answer. He did, however, buy it as an excuse to not commit to an answer Shino would have to defend later on. I guess it would be hard to tell objectively. So, he wondered, do you feel like he won? Shino could not entirely suppress a smirk. No. Spar with me. Shikamaru had thought that his interaction with Uchiha would be a unique case. Apparently, Uchiha had other ideas. I know you're not asleep, said the irritant. He waited for a moment and then growled. Nara. Shikamaru let his head roll to the side and blearily glared through one eye. Buzz off. Spar with me, Nara. Shikamaru raised himself upright, then decided it was not worth it, and let himself sink against the backrest. Troublesome. Nara dash. No. Akimichi dash. You're a lot stronger than me, Sasuke-kun, Chuji said with absolutely no doubt, and a fervent wish to avoid being beaten up. Uchiha had never bullied him about the big bone thing, but that was probably because he couldn't be bothered to talk at all usually. Choji had no idea what kind of bee had stung the guy, but he wished it didn't have anything to do with him. And he also wished that he was a little more like Shika, and could just say no, and have it be accepted. He knew that if he said no, Uchiha would insist, and they'd end up sparring and Choji would lose and... "Hey, what's up?" Yoshi chirped. "Sasuke-kun, I didn't know you're friends with Choji." "Jealous?" Uchiha asked, a little nastily. Choji expected Yoshi to laugh this off, but it didn't happen. Yoshi went stiff and lowered his head. When he looked up again, his smile was obviously fake. "Nah, of course not." "What you're talking about?" Uchiha snorted. Choji watched Yoshi with wide eyes. Had this happened because Choji and Shikamaru had stopped spending time with Yoshi? Had Ino infected him? Or maybe Ino had learned that horrible Yamanaka jutsu, taken over Yoshi's body, and was now trying to get at Uchiha this way. "Nah, Sasuke-kun," Yoshi said timidly, "if you want to dash." "Fine," hissed Uchiha. Training Field 6, 4:30, Yamanaka. Choji and Yoshi watched as he strode away brimming with self-satisfaction. Yoshi was biting his lip. Choji cast about for something helpful to say, but he wasn't clever like Shikamaru, or like Ino, and the best he could do was put his hand on Yoshi's arm and lie, "I'm sure it will work out." Yoshi moved closer, seeking the physical contact. He turned his head to meet Choji's eye. Finally, he released his lip from the grip of his teeth. And grinned, the exact same way Ino grinned when she had just ruined someone's life. "Thanks, Choji. You're a great friend. But don't worry, really. And if you need me to rescue you from Mr. Gotta Prove Myself again, don't hesitate to give me a shout. I'll rescue you anytime you need it." He skipped away, far happier than he should have been after Uchiha had treated him like dirt. Shikamaru, who was once again pretending to sleep rather than truly sleeping, scoffed and muttered, "What a pain." Choji did not consider hitting him, because that was not the way he ever acted toward his friends. That was serious stuff, and he wasn't willing to hurt anybody he cared about, but he definitely wasn't going to share his chips with Shikamaru. As if it wasn't enough that he had broken off his friendship with Yoshi, now he said mean stuff about him. Choji opened his textbook and tried to focus on the chapter about the causes of the Third Shinobi War. It was less depressing than his friends. The first words out of Sasuke's mouth after they met was, "Spar now." Naruto wasn't sure if this was supposed to be a dick measuring contest to establish the pecking order, or if he had to qualify for being worth listening to, but he had zero problems with a taijutsu-only spar. Sasuke agreed to the condition, and they spent a rousing half-hour punching and kicking the snot out of one another. Sasuke was better by a margin, but Naruto was used to sparring against Ino, and Sasuke's acrobatics-heavy style was quite similar to Ino's, which gave Naruto an advantage he used mercilessly. He was pants at that style, so Dad had taught him something else, which he said he had picked up somewhere. Naruto burnt with curiosity, but so far had had no luck finding out any details of that picking up. Sasuke, it turned out, didn't have anyone to spar against regularly, although he more than made up for it with skill and bloody-mindedness. The final balance was, Naruto black and blue, Sasuke with a broken nose and a spectacular bruise over most of his face. "You'll be my rival," Sasuke decided upon catching his breath and draining a bottle of water. "I'm not sure if I can make that kind of commitment," Naruto protested and catalogued the guileless order, which Sasuke automatically expected to be obeyed, as a symptom. "I already have a rival, or do you not mind sharing?" It was a simple question and a potentially revealing one. Naruto made a mental note to find out later what it meant that Sasuke had to think about it so hard. Eventually, staring at his sandals, Sasuke demanded, "Who is this person?" "Wasn't that completely obvious?" "My sister." "Your sister," Sasuke repeated incredulously, but at least it made him look up so he could treat Naruto to his unimpressed by your shit expression. Which left a lot to desire, what with the huge, rapidly darkening bruise and the trail of blood from his nose to his chin, dripping down to his chest, soaking into his shirt. He looked like a civilian victim of mugging. "You don't see it because she annoys you," but she's smart and strong, Naruto assured him. It aggravated him too, he could empathize. Definitely better than me at most things. I'm just nicer than her. And most people couldn't help but respond to that. Little kids loved Naruto, and so did old ladies. Even Sasuke was getting hooked by it, sort of, which Naruto decided not to point out to him just yet. The Uchiha ego might have been offended by it, and an oppositional Sasuke would have been even more of a pain to deal with than this self-defensively apathetic one. That makes sense, Sasuke allowed reluctantly, as if saying anything positive about Ino caused him physical pain. You are trained in many of the same techniques, aren't you? Yes. I do not have a rival, but I have an enemy. Trained in the same techniques as I, over a longer time. And he was always far more talented than I. Holy Izanagi, relatability was happening. Naruto mentally punched the air. Then it's okay, he pointed out smoothly, as if he hadn't just had his second great breakthrough. Open rivalry, ha. I am going to kill him, Sasuke announced solemnly in lieu of shaking hands or nodding coolly or, perish the thought, verbally accepting the deal. He seemed to be expecting a response too. Naruto didn't know what was so dramatic about it. Sasuke was an orphan whose whole family, whole clan, had been murdered. Naruto couldn't even imagine his mom and dad and Inoue-san and Ayakane and Rikuto and II and all the people who came in and out, tending plants and bugging dad and all the cousins twice or thrice removed, just not being there tomorrow. He thought he would go crazy if that happened. Properly bugfuck crazy. And here Sasuke was, 5 years later, still hanging on to sanity by his fingertips. Naruto actually, honestly, admired that. He did not like Sasuke, but then, he did not know Sasuke. He might have liked the Sasuke that would have been if his clan were alive, although, while he was being all honest, he didn't think that was likely. Whatever. Point was, Naruto totally supported Sasuke in his decision to kill the guy that had done it, and was prepared to help make it happen. So, what have you got so far? Don't make that face, I'm pretty good at strategy. What's the plan? Train until I am stronger than him dash. Why? So I can kill him, idiot. With superhuman effort Naruto managed not to roll his eyes. Oh, dear Izanagi's flowering fields, whyy? No, listen to me. Don't walk away. Listen. You're a shinobi. You're the silent death. You come out of the dark and slit your enemies' throats before they know you're there. You lure them into traps or trick their own allies into stabbing them in the back. You don't attack them head-on to compete. That's what you've got rivals for. He's not your rival. He's your enemy. You literally just said so. Naruto had to pause for a breath. And for dramatic effect, Sasuke was standing frozen in the middle of the road. Naruto waited for a moment and, when no reaction was forthcoming, he chanced walking up to him and around him to check on his face. Sasuke was usually pale as chalk, but obviously it was still possible for color to drain from his face. He looked ashen. His eyes were wider than they had ever been before. But it didn't look quite like an anxiety attack. Naruto very slowly, at snail's pace, put a hand on Sasuke's shoulder. When it wasn't immediately shaken off, he dared squeeze a little. Did you make this plan when you were 7? HN. You realize you're smarter now than you were at 7, Naruto pointed out. His hand was promptly swatted away and Sasuke strode off down the road toward the Uchiha compound so fast he raised little clouds of dust. Plans can be revised, you know? Naruto called after him. He too would have been embarrassed by such an oversight, and it was hurting him not to use this opportunity to mock Sasuke mercilessly. Especially stupid plans. If you're going on a mission, don't start by discarding all your gear and weapons and charge and just wielding a blunted kunai dash. Shut up. Sasuke snarled and, after a second of breathless anticipation, ran. That's it for this reading. Hit like and subscribe for a free ticket pass going to the different worlds of anime fanfictions. Looking forward to having you on board again.